All right. Greetings, everyone. Welcome to Terra Prime Live. We are a little week late here because I had some technical problems breaking my computer and all, but we are back online here. This week we are doing Mando Madness here. We're going to be talking about The Mandalorian, kind of up to now. Pretty much the whole show. A lot of, obviously, most of it's going to be season 2 here. So if you have not watched The Mandalorian, if you intend to watch The Mandalorian, if you have any interest in this at all, we're going to spoil the hell out of it today. So if you haven't done that and you don't want to be spoiled, leave now, watch your thing, come back and enjoy it at a later date. So we'll just get that. That's the spoiler warning for everybody out there. If you don't heed it from this point on, prepare to be spoiled. All right. So we have for our panel here tonight, we've got a good group. We got our TPLA council members here, John, Jared. How are you guys doing? Oh, wait, I got to do the mute thing here. There, you should be able to unmute yourself now. Haha.
And that's when I told the monkey to get his hands off my lightsaber.
Right. Right. All right. And we've got 2 of our apprentices, or actually 3 of our apprentices here. Deso and Anna over there, and Aubrey Brawler. How you doing? Oh, and we have Alex there. We see snuck in there over from France. Bonsoir. All right. So, and joining us for our Mandalorian episode here, we have an actual Mandalorian. So, Nico Fett from the Mandalorian Mercs is joining us here. He will be helping us navigate through the canon lore and all that stuff. Mandalorian and all that kind of thing. So glad to have you, Nico. All right. So everybody should be able to unmute themselves at will. Anyway, so here we are, season 2 of The Mandalorian. We can, it's starting to, it's not quite as episodic as the first season, I think. So they kind of blend into each other a little bit more, like each episode, But one of the things that's so cool about it, both seasons, right? And we can kind of start on this, is not just the Mandalorian thing, like expanding on the Mandalorian culture and all of that, but expanding on like all of these kind of background characters and aliens, the Tusken Raiders, crate dragons, taking all of these things and bringing them, kind of into focus. And I think on the gallery thing, Dave Filoni likened it to like our older brother took away all of our cool figures and we were just left with like the Ugnaughts, this, and somehow we had a Boba Fett character, or a Boba Fett thing, so that we made the whole story around that. Anyway, that's one of the great things about the show. And obviously there's fan service, but I don't think you need to be a fan, because it would just like add mystery to it. Like if you don't know who Boba Fett is, I don't know how you would get to The Mandalorian without knowing who Boba Fett is. But let's say you did, I don't think it would be necessarily detrimental not to know that information, because it's still a kind of like an interesting mystery of like, well, how did this guy get all this Mandalorian armor, and so thoughts on that?
That's really been the story of Disney Star Wars so far, is trying to find a balance where we can all appreciate the same thing but at different levels. And I think this more than any of their previous projects is really starting to approach it.
Yeah. I mean, I have family that they're big Disney fans, but they're not big Star Wars fans. And the cool thing about this is it kind of approaches it from a different perspective. I mean, this is a space Western. This is like a samurai movie or a good, bad, and the ugly kind of thing. And the story is, yeah, it's set in the Star Wars universe, but it's it's really it really appeals to a number of other people as well. So it's a great way to maybe bring more people into the Star Wars universe that maybe wouldn't necessarily, explore that.
Yeah, it is definitely one of the more unifying
Mm-hmm.
of the properties, especially now out there.
Have Blaster will travel.
Yeah.
Like Lone Wolf and Cub too, like the comic books. Like if you're into, that kind of thing, like there's so many references to that sort of stuff. So
yeah, when we had the last conversation with me and Jared and some other folks, we kind of went more into that, those kind of original, it's drawing on it's taking from the same well that the original Star Wars did, and not the 3 movies, just the first movie, right? Let's go for the Western. We're going for this used future, right? I don't know if I mentioned it in the other ones, but one of the things I love, another thing too, is they're kind of doing these, like hitting these sci-fi tropes kind of like head on. Like first episode, they reveal, show, and talk about a toilet, which it's like, yeah, okay, that's
never see those on Star Wars ships.
Yeah, right, exactly. So, yeah, so there's a meta-ness to it. There's all of that. There's a self-consciousness, not a self-consciousness, but a self-awareness of itself, which I think is pretty refreshing too.
Well, going into the first episode of season 2,
yeah,
the first scene we see of him walking through the lamps and some rundown, almost cyberpunky, abandoned part of some town on some planet somewhere. I don't even know where it is. And then he goes into the fight club, and that was a really interesting image, because the gladiatorial fights are a common thing you find in Star Wars role-playing video games. You're always running into those in like the Knights of the Old Republic game. And so that was really cool. And then seeing Gamorreans fighting with personal shields, I mean, that was pretty awesome. And thoughts on
yeah,
that?
no, I mean, I totally agree. Like, and the John Leguizamo's character was one of my favorites, because I love it when they take those old cantina masks and they put life to them.
Oh yeah,
and just make them better.
In that same vein, it's a lot of the work of the Mandalorian seems to be fleshing out concepts that are alluded to but not really made good on. We know from Return of the Jedi that the Gamorreans are scary for some reason and seem formidable. Now we know why. Right. Same thing with the Sarlacc and the Krayt Dragon. I was so glad to see a Krayt Dragon. That was so awesome.
Oh, yeah.
The Krayt Dragon was pretty awesome, yeah.
And now understanding.
Just like the fight against the Krayt Dragon in the KOTOR games, where you're doing it at the behest of Tuskens, and you have to blow it up with explosives, and you're just trying to get its pearl.
Yeah, I had heard that. I'd never seen. So now I'm coming at it from the. I haven't played the video games or read the novels or any of the comic books or anything like that, and I wasn't into the previous EU, the now Legends. So I'm kind of coming at this only knowing Clone Wars, Rebels, the movies and all of that kind of stuff. So, and I know we have much more knowledge in the other stuff on the panel here. So I just want to get that out of the way. But yeah, I had heard that it mirrors, the video game there, a lot, because I know they took a lot of design elements from video game.
And that's the great thing. It's like it's a little Easter egg for those of us that played those old video games. To see the like I said, the shields and the Fight Club, and their plan for killing the Krayt Dragon, which doesn't really work that good, but it worked. But it worked in the video game.
Yeah,
I think
just laid out mines and lured it out.
They're
Yeah.
even alluding to dark troopers at this point. If you caught that last scene,
Yes.
there is
Yeah, the
no
last
way
scene.
that's, if it's not a dark trooper, it's something very similar.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That
So
was very exciting.
yeah. Now the Tuscans are another, I mean, probably the highlight for me of the probably of the I think of like it's one of the things I like most about the series, right? Even from their first appearance in the other Tatooine episode in season 1, right, where he gives the guy his binoculars, which show up in the first episode of season 2. The guy's using the binoculars that he got off the other bounty hunter guy. But yeah, I mean, the sign language aspect of it. I'm going to be doing a blog post on this pretty soon. But using sign language with Tusken Raiders is brilliant, right? Sign language has been used in situations like this before. Now, I'm pretty sure that the writers probably came up with it because of Indian Sign Language, right? So the Native Americans over on this continent had, or North America really, had a kind of shared language that was shared between a bunch of tribes who spoke completely separate languages of sign, right? So that they could communicate with each other. And that shows up in Westerns at times. But the fact that, the harsh environment, Tusken Raiders are covered, all of this stuff, it would make speaking difficult. They only have these grunts and growls and screams and, that kind of thing. That's a really interesting and nice, dimension that they gave
it gives character to faceless villains.
Mhm.
Right? Which is something that, for everything we love about Star Wars, right? They fall heavily into tropes, right? Because that's what it is. It's a trope for Lucas saw it. I believe he made this very clear at Celebration 7, that it was a vehicle to teach life lessons to 12-year-olds, right? And it's trope based because tropes work for those things. But for more I don't want to necessarily say mature because we're not necessarily more mature, but more developed audiences, right, that aren't 12 anymore and don't need those life lessons. The Mandalorian fleshes out those tropes and makes Tuskens, yes, they're raiders and they're brutal, but they're honorable and they'll keep their word because they understand the value of those bonds, because they're not faceless villains that'll just attack for no reason. It's like if they make an agreement, then it's an agreement and they're going to keep to it. And that the Mandalorian, states, I've spent a lot of time on Tatooine, obviously with Tuskens. He speaks their language. He's very comfortable with them. He knows how to interact with their domesticated animals. It gives a really interesting dimension to them, which again harkens back to what Nico was saying. And if you hadn't played the old KOTOR game, there's actually a time when you interact with them when no one else will. Your character in the game has to go and interact with them to further his quest or her quest, depending on how you're playing the game. So I thought that was really interesting that they brought some of that culture for the Tuskens forward into the modern canon, and made them less faceless villains and more a unique culture within Star Wars, which we've seen lots of times in Clone Wars, right? The Twi'leks and the other various races have their own very unique culture, and to take the faceless bad guy that is in the throwaway scene to create a danger for Luke in the first movie and develop them into something much better and much more interesting. I think that was like you said, it's a real high point for the series and for Star Wars in general.
We do the same thing with the Jawas as well, to a lesser degree, right? Like in the first season, where Jawas are kind of that bad but comedic relief a little bit in the original movie, and then they start fleshing them out a little bit. I mean, again, it's still not really developed, but it's the same thing like in the first season with the egg, and you just realize just how ridiculous this whole thing is. But it's it's still a little bit more, developed. So, that's something I really like. And it was kind of mentioned earlier that they're taking the lesser known characters or some of the background characters that are just very surface wise, almost a caricature, and bringing them out and fleshing them out and giving them a little bit more depth. And it makes the whole universe a little bit more, again, talking about the toilets, right? It just makes the whole universe more relatable and more just a fuller universe, rather than, again, the Skywalker, line of thought, right? It just gives it more depth.
Yeah. Now, in the first episode, we get our first, obviously he sends the guy, he says there's a Mandalorian on Tatooine. Now, I've watched the episode a bunch of times, watched it over here. When I first watched it, I did not make the connection between Boba Fett and a Mandalorian on Tatooine. Watching it again, I'm like, duh, right? But so let's talk about the Boba Fett
or Timothy Oliphant. Which one are we talking about?
The what?
Timothy Oliphant was the character that played the Marshal.
So how Boba Fett kind of enters into the Mandalorian here, because he enters first of all because we see his armor again being worn by the Marshal, right? So
speaking of the Marshal and him wearing Boba Fett's armor, right? It
was very cool seeing a book character come to the screen.
Right, absolutely. So the character is referenced in several interludes in the Aftermath
trilogy.
Yep. Oh, really? Okay.
Yes.
He's.
Go ahead.
No, I was going to say I was equally excited. I read those books the moment they came out, and Cobb Vanth is sort of a recurring minor character. That's like the Max Rebo saga. Who would have ever thought that would happen? And then Cobb Vanth shows up, and I about spat out my blue milk.
So, it was great. And the only thing they could have done to make it better was to actually have Maliki show up.
Yeah.
If you don't know who Maliki is, good luck Googling it. But in the very last interlude in those books, in the third book, Maliki, the Rancor trainer, the guy that's crying when Luke kills the Rancor in Return of the Jedi, he ends up finding their village, and he goes to herding the banthas. He basically takes over as the bantha herder, as the bantha shepherd, I guess you'd call it. So great little nod to another really minor character.
Yeah.
But they could not have found a better person to not be Boba Fett, because Timothy Oliphant is a beanpole, and
right. Yeah.
At all. It just doesn't fit. He'd never get accepted, right? It's like, no, you got to
promo pictures for him. He looks much better fitted than he actually does in the show. Where he's standing there in the doorway, it looks too big, and his armor looks too small.
Yeah, that's the thing, and that, like you said, John, that is an added detail which I really like, how it's too short for him, and yet still a little too big, right? Because he's almost swimming in it a little bit,
and he's got to wear a scarf to hide his neck, right? Because his neck's hanging below the helmet, like 8 inches of neck there. So he's got to wear a scarf to hide that, cover it up.
Another aspect, though, is the fact that Timothy Oliphant has become known for his Western roles, and it fits right on in with that Mandalorian spaghetti Western style that they've been doing. So it's a perfect fit for the show.
Between
Deadwood
and Justified, yeah, absolutely.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, the Deadwood, the oh god, the unfinished masterpiece. Oh well. Yes. So Timothy Oliphant. So now he buys the armor off Jawas, right? Now, is this fitting with how it is depicted in the novels at all with this character, or is this just all being?
It's very close. They changed little things, but not enough that it would impact the story.
An interesting thought I actually had with the differences, if you know about them, is that he might, since he's the one telling the story this time, maybe what happened in the book is what actually happened, and maybe this one is like kind of his point of view to make him look the best, since he's maybe trying to impress the Mandalorian. So when you consider the differences, and they're pretty minor, but that was something I heard on another podcast, and I was like, oh yeah, I guess
That's I've heard a few people talking about that, but
Sorry.
No, I just think it's it would be a clever way to convey his character if they somehow end up showing later that, well, maybe he sort of spun the truth a little bit. He's more in line with Han Solo, well, if you round up.
Yeah.
From a certain point of view.
From a certain point of view.
Yeah. Yeah. And I think I've always kind of interpreted it that way, like in inconsistencies and stuff like that. It's just like, well, somebody's BSing somebody or whatever.
It doesn't affect things much more than like how the final season of Clone Wars took and made Ahsoka's lightsabers blue, despite in the Ahsoka book they're green.
Mm-hmm.
That kind of small differences where it's like you can look past it.
Yes. Yeah. Now, so the armor itself does look sort of digested, right? It's like pitted and.
Well, the paint is definitely more gone. The paint is melted off.
Yeah.
So, or been braided off, whichever.
Right.
The dents and markings on it seem to be consistent with what he already had in Return of the Jedi, though.
Yes.
Except his jetpack is now repaired.
Right.
Make sure you tell your people I didn't break that.
Right.
There's like a slash along the back that shows up in like certain shots of Return of the Jedi that makes it seem like there was a deleted scene where Luke slashed it. But damage is repaired and the Mandalorian has like a metal patch over it.
Yep. Yeah, I did notice that. So, and then at the very end of that thing, we have what is ostensibly Boba Fett himself.
Mm-hmm.
Just kind of
we certainly see a clone wearing black robes, carrying Tusken weapons.
Yes, carrying Tusken weapons, black robes, played by Tamora Morrison.
The fact that it doesn't say it.
Right. So,
I think John and I are of a mind on this that it would be another very clever turn in storytelling to have that turn out to be just a clone.
Right.
A big stretch.
Up with a full head of hair and...
If Rex was on Endor.
I don't know. Maybe we'll see Rex. I don't know, but I don't know that they'll bring him into it.
I'm sure it will end up being Boba Fett, but
oh no, I think it's definitely
yeah.
Now, here's a question. In the end of I can't remember what that episode was called. The other Tatooine episode, the first one.
The Gunslinger.
Yeah, Gunslinger. Okay. So at the very end, you see someone come to pick up the body.
Of Mandalorian's character.
Right. That would be. Are we thinking that's Boba Fett?
It's possible.
It's very possible. Could have been Boba Fett. It could have been the Marshal. Well, she wasn't there. So,
but if it ends up being Boba Fett, it would make sense as vis-a-vis long-term storytelling because he is also getting a crew together, just very slowly, and they're all going to come back with a vengeance. And these are all people who don't particularly care for a man, the Mando.
Mm-hmm.
We don't necessarily know what beef Fett might have with him, other than maybe he knows he has his armor now.
Yeah, maybe.
I'll kill you.
Now, here's the question, and we'll direct this over to Nico. Is Boba Fett's armor supposed to be his father's armor repainted?
It was originally the implication, but now no, he's got like several suits of armor. It's been like they're running explanation of differences in appearances over time. Like how some comics will have his Empire Strikes Back look, some will have his Return of the Jedi look. It's like his helmet is pretty consistent throughout all of it, but his armor pieces change color, and at least his father's helmet got blown up in Clone Wars series.
Right, that's true. Yep, I forgot about that.
So it's like the armor itself may have come from Django, but it's probably not the same one that he wears.
Right, right. Yes. Now, okay, so we've got the from Tatooine, he's now got Boba Fett's armor. And he flies off, picks up the frog lady.
So, a quick comment about the frog lady.
Yes.
So, she appears very briefly. That I would discover this in the first season when he enters the cantina. There's a very quick flash of it, and also somebody posted on the internet that there is a frog-like lady or frog-like character in one of the rubber masks. It's different. You can tell, obviously, in I guess the original movie.
Okay. Well, R5D4 shows up in the first cantina scene as well.
Yes, and again with Amy
Sedaris'
mechanic, Amy Sedaris' character.
Yeah,
I mean that's him. He's got the little burnt smoke trail.
We have the big Ant-Man that I'm assuming is supposed to be our first live action look at a Kalik from Alderaan, but because they're a very ant-looking species.
Okay. Yeah, that's right. The big Dr. Mandible, she calls him. Yes. So anyway, he gets the frog lady. They have that one episode, kind of a Gambit episode, where they get to explore more McCory sketches and those spiders, which are neat. But it all leads up to the big set piece of the season, which is everybody has been waiting for, is the appearance of more Mandos. And
I thought you were going to say Mon Calamari Fisherman.
Oh, well, that too. Yes. Yeah, and the Quarren, right? But yes, and then the arrival of not just Mandos, but we got Bo-Katan from Clone Wars, from Rebels, voiced by Katie Sackhoff, now acted by Katie Sackhoff, which is a pretty cool transition. I mean, I can't think of anything.
They could not have done it better.
No. And we get even more fidelity on Mando culture, right? We now know that there's like branches of Mandalorian culture out there, right? We have
the Din's in a cult.
Yep, which makes sense because if you look back at his flashbacks, the guy who picks him up has a Death Watch symbol on his pauldron,
and the Death Watch were an offshoot of what was now correct. No, this is your area of expertise, Nico.
Yeah, we should send it over to Nico here.
So.
Well, Death Watch is a splinter group of the Mandalorians, and then it sounds like the Children of the Watch are a splinter group of Death Watch, which my assumption has been that they're basically like what happened after Bo-Katan split the Death Watch again during Clone Wars, her group, and so maybe they're left over from the ones who stood by Maul, and then while Gar Saxon, who was in charge of them underneath Maul, decided to immediately just turn and bow to the Empire. Maybe they didn't like that, and they decided to go off and be their own culty things.
It is interesting that the big boy Mando in the first season was actually named Paz Vizsla. So he's of the clan of the guy that led the Death Watch before.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Yep. Voiced again by Jon Favreau. I liked the way they played it too, because and I don't remember the new guy's name, but when they take their helmets off and he's like, "You're not Mandalorian, you took your helmets off," and he turns and goes, "Oh, he's one of them."
I believe the character's name was Axe something.
Axe Wolves.
Okay, axe. Okay then. Well, yes, axe. Yes, but that was I enjoyed that. Like, okay, so not only is there like this different, but they don't necessarily mix.
Well, the implications are big,
Yeah.
and not just in like story arc, but like character development. It's like now that Mando, right, is found out that, you know, it's like, oh well, there's fake Mandos out there, and whether or not current canon or whatever Disney decides to do decides whether or not the Fets were actually Mandos or not, or left the Mandos or were kicked out, whatever they're going with, but that there are Mandalorians that like are Mandalorians that just don't follow the same practices that he was raised in. And is later in the season, is Mando going to make a more moderate choice of
can't imagine
religion?
I ever met Mandos that weren't involved or in touch with their little group.
True. Yeah.
And there's also a bit of character growth with Mando after that episode, where he's still not taking his helmet off, but he is bringing it up just enough so that he can drink stew with the child at the same table, where before he's absolutely not doing it.
Oh yeah, because like what was it, the first Cara Dune episode last season, he had to wait until everyone left the room before he'd eat.
Right. Mm-hmm.
That also shows how close he's becoming with the kid, and also that we kick things off with him kind of amusingly, I guess, trusting the child to try to make some minor repairs.
Right, in this episode. Yeah.
But it says something that he's willing to depend on the child a little bit.
Yeah.
That indicates they're becoming family, which is going to make the inevitable departure of the kid significantly harder. And of course, you know, with all the foreshadowing, I think it's fairly obvious that the big lesson at the end of the series is a Mandalorian is, you know, kind of it lives in your heart. It's not about the helmet.
And it's also interesting that his right, going back to like the difference in philosophy, is Bo-Katan's a veteran, right? She's been through the Clone Wars. She's dealt with like the fall of her people several times now, between the Empire's Purge, the Mandalorians, and the Clone Wars taking over, and that she's like willing to just change the deal, right? Which Din Djarin was just like shocked. He's like, "You're changing the terms of our deal, of our agreement, in the middle of right?" And she's super sarcastically, "This is the way." You know, it's like, "You want my help? Is you going to do what I say?"
Right.
On the other hand, she is the just like the title of the episode, she's the heiress. I mean,
yeah. I mean, she's but you're right that but remember, her character's never been particularly nice. She's not Satine, her sister, right? So I think that the fact that she just basically is basically treating Din Djarin like, you know, like a Westboro Baptist church member, you know, is pretty funny, you know. I don't know. Is this consistent with what I mean? How is this the revelation of this new stuff, or how much is it new and how much is previously known?
I mean, it pretty well tracks for Bo-Katan to have her story matches up better than like what was it? We said Cobb had like a couple different discrepancies, but it was pretty spot on for her previous depictions, and she's no stranger to being betrayed. So I guess to her, changing a deal is just something that always happens to her. So might as well something she does. She's just, hi there. I have a kitty in the back of my chair now. To her, she's just only dedicated to getting the Darksaber back and getting back to Mandalore, and everything else is just part of the trip.
Yeah. It's interesting the way the show did it, because they started this whole thing with the whole culvert and the "this is the way" and the helmet thing, and we're kind of left wondering, like, well, wait a second, in Rebels and this stuff, none of this, how did this come about? So it's interesting how they're kind of like revealing that piece by piece. We can kind of see a kind of evolution.
Bits at a time.
Also reinforced in these first few episodes is the idea that the Beskar is super rare and incredibly valuable.
Mhm.
Twice, he tries two groups of ne'er-do-wells try to jump him and murder him to take just his armor,
Right.
just for having it. And obviously both groups get way in over their head very quickly, but it's very interesting that, like, not only is the child hunted, which we see at the beginning of the Ice Planet, the passenger episode, right? There's a group of bounty hunters that recognize them leaving town or something, and they're trying to get the kid back. I mean, the first thing they do is say, grab the child. When they, so at first I thought it was just pirates or just bandits, but they want the child. They very clearly state that. So it's a group of bounty hunters still trying to hunt the child. That is what I took from it. But that, not only does John Leguizamo's character try to just kill him and take his armor, but also, the Quarrens, I mean, that's their whole ploy.
Yeah.
They try to drown him and take his armor.
Yep.
And Quarren pirates.
Yes. And should we, I don't know, should we mention the controversy over the whole Mandalorian female Mandalorian armor thing?
It looks way better than any previous one we've seen.
So
Yeah.
Interestingly enough, if you look at the armorer's armor, it's the same way. It's shaped for her torso.
Right.
I mean, it protrudes to make space, which is what armor has to do, right? And there's a few other videos on YouTube that have covered this well in depth, pointing out obvious plot holes or obvious issues with it being an issue. That's a really weird way to say it. But anyway, it's science fantasy. I mean,
well, so here's
like the first Mandalorian female armor we ever saw in Legends was like just boob cups on top of Boba plates. And so they've been slowly tweaking it each time Bo appears, even because her plates look different each appearance of herself. I feel like this is probably one of the least egregious versions of Mando female armor we've seen.
Yeah. Well, and this is
we armor would not be a thing historically, but crotch armor that has the shape of a dick.
I was gonna say, when are we gonna get a Mandalorian with a cod piece, right?
Yeah, right.
Well, Boba Fett wears a pretty large cod piece.
This is true.
He kind of always has. I mean, it's not but it's just, I don't know.
Well, I think the problem with how it all started is this whole idea of boob armor. There is a type of armor where if you create these shapes, will have a detrimental effect on the protective ability of that armor and the comfort of you wearing it, right? Now, if you have like a regular plate armor breastplate, right, and you just make boobs on it, these are nothing more than ornaments. It's still never going to get to touching your chest. Most breastplates sit above your body to prevent anything from hitting you. So that's not really an issue. This is not that type of armor. This is like a flak jacket or something that's going to be more form-fitting to the body. And plus, the problems that are with boob armor are usually it's usually the steel bikini, right?
No bikini, yeah.
Where it's just two boob cups and a string and everything like that. And that comes from the whole barbarian genre, of them just like trying to make the, because Frazetta was a bodybuilder, so he liked to, paint bodybuilders and stuff like that. So, the Mandalorian armor being shaped like that is not.
So
that's a totally different type of armor.
I mean, in this case, my mind goes to, if you look at like Trojan armor, real, actual, historical Trojan armor, right? Or Spartans, or anybody else who was wearing that sort of lamellar lineage of body protection. In a lot of cases, they're carving things out to look muscular, right? And it's not as if the opponent is actually going to think that you look like Dwayne Johnson and are so ripped you're actually forming metal around your pecs. The implication is it's supposed to be a subconscious. It's the same reason why football teams wear unnecessarily large shoulder pads, right? It's trying to trick your lizard brain into believing that it is fighting against something beyond human, right? The supernatural hero. You know, they're using Heracles as the inspiration for that kind of armor, which is why it doesn't make a lot of sense to me to have boob armor. But maybe that's just me.
Well, even Din Djarin's Beskar armor has like molded pecs to it, compared to like Boba's original just flat chest armor.
Correct. And if you look at the Stormtrooper armor, all of those Stormtrooper armor has boobs, man boobs. I mean, they're literal like wedges out there. But again,
it's like Batman armor,
right? But it's
without the nipples.
The complaint about boob armor is only relevant to plate mail, to like plate armors, and only to stuff that's like form fitted to the body, right? Like I said, if you have a regular breastplate that's sitting above your sternum, right, putting anything out here is just an ornament, right? Now this is all fantasy armor, and there are problems upon problems upon problems with fantasy armor. Boobs are the least of the worries. I mean, there's all these spikes that lead all the way to your weak points, all this kind of crap, you know. So it's somebody, I think, taking that argument and just kind of like applying it piecemeal to this, saying boob armor is wrong. But it's not really, it's just not historical. But neither is this. So
they don't want lady asses in their show.
Right. Yes.
It's kind of a perfect reaction without the sound.
Yeah, well, we can't see you because I'm not in gallery mode here. Hold on. There we go.
Hold on. We've got a plane overhead too right now. But I'm hearing all of these guys talk about boob armor, and I'm just sitting here going, okay, so I see people from an actual fighting point. Well, we don't care about how they look. And when you look at the Mando armor, it's not even boob armor. It's just a piece that comes out and down. It's not even really accentuating anything. So I don't see why this has become such a discussion. It's not real world armor. It's what they do. So
again, I think wasn't it the person who kind of like made a deal of it in the video game world? I think it was somebody that had some sort of clout that tweeted this.
Room for the body, I get to a certain degree in the comment, but I remember when you had Captain Phasma come out, how much we celebrated the fact that she's just in regular Stormtrooper armor. It wasn't changed in design. And I still feel the same exact way about the Mandalorian armor, where I saw it and I was like, that's cool looking armor. I feel the same way about that as I did the Stormtrooper armor. I feel like people are making mountains out of molehills. No pun intended, because we're talking about boobs. But it's just one of those things where I feel this is one of those borderline, not here, not this discussion, but seeing it in other chat rooms and other discussion areas, it brings out a toxicity that's not needed in this fandom. Like, can we move away from talking about the way their chesticles looked in this armor and talk about other aspects? Because it was a strong episode, but let's pinpoint this one thing that didn't even affect the show. It's just a weird topic. Am I the only one that feels that way?
I agree 100% because, right, is like with Gwendolyn Christie's character, with Captain Phasma, it's like a regular suit of Stormtrooper armor fit her just fine. And that's fine. And, you know, I don't know these ladies' proportions, but maybe their physicality doesn't allow them to just wear normal Mandalorian armor. Maybe it has to be shaped. I mean, the armor's been in her family for generations. Maybe that's just the way it is, and she won't change it.
we don't know what she's wearing underneath. If there's another support piece, like we'll take TPLA for example, where we wear the protective plate underneath and then all the other equipment. What if there's something else underneath that for protection, so that's added room for movement? We're not in that world. We don't know.
Well,
It's just an odd.
I'm going to kind of point in here that we actually do know, because we have that type of armor, and that type of armor must be conformed to the body. It's not plate mail armor. All of these arguments over boob armor are completely irrelevant to this type of armor. It's not.
I 100% agree. People talking about their experiences with armor, and it's okay, but we already know. It's not like what you were talking about with the art from the 80s, that shaped cup piece. That is very high fantasy. This is just something protecting the chest, and it makes sense. It is weird. It is a weird topic.
Well, I will say this. If we did not obsess about tiny little details in these things, we probably wouldn't have anything that we're talking about. It's just what we tend to take out of here. I mean, people were arguing about him eating the eggs because that, whatever, but
because he was a monster.
Yes. Well, he is kind of a monster, and I think they're setting him up that way. I mean, he's taking joy in watching people get disintegrated. He's going, yay, when the Mando blows somebody up in their ship. Baby Yoda ain't not. He steals cookies from a kid in this last episode.
Macaroons. Macaroons canon now.
Yeah, exactly. Right. Blue ones too.
Those are details I need to talk about, not chest armor. That's just a creative design thing, and I don't think it's something that I don't mind discussing it here because it's like-minded, open-minded individuals. But in some of these groups, it gets down and out toxic. It's a really weird discussion.
Internet thread.
It's odd. And when I try to talk about it as a female Star Wars fan and as someone who fights, I'm still shut out of the conversation. It's weird. Mm-hmm. It's an odd thing.
Yeah. Well, yes. Anyway, the Mando armor, and I think the series is really kind of expanding on the Mando armor too, right? And this is why I bring this up, because we see it being used as a weapon in and of itself. And so it's not only valuable, like John was talking about, right? But like in almost all of the fight sequences with the Mando, he's like headbutting people. They're like hitting him, and he's just like putting an armor piece in their way and doing that, which is that's pretty cool, pretty brilliant to me. I've been thinking about doing, all kinds of stuff where you would use armor as a weapon.
But yeah, we've gone into some amount of detail, you and I, about historical precedents. I mean, I'm from a school where we make heavy use of forearm gauntlets.
Yeah, absolutely. So we've got now set up, even two factions, two things. I hope Bo-Katan will show up again, because she's one of my favorite characters from Clone Wars, and yeah, I mean, I thought she was awesome in this episode, and for all those, or the past episode, the Heiress, and then of course she drops the nerd squeal line of "Go find Ahsoka Tano," right? So everybody goes, "Yay!" Ooh.
I mean, it's the only Jedi she knows, and I guarantee we're probably gonna get an Ahsoka line, which is like, "I'm not a Jedi." They're like, but she said. Yeah.
Well, she didn't say. She just said, "Go find Ahsoka Tano," and maybe she can help you. But yeah, I think you're right. I think Ahsoka Tano is going to resist the whole Jedi thing and all of that. And we are all certain that oh my God,
Rosario Dawson.
Yes, thank you. Is playing.
Certain
herself.
strong word, since it was never announced.
Yeah, I
I
know.
wasn't even certain she was in this series until she said it in the episode.
Yep.
I suspect a lot of that will inevitably depend on assuming they haven't already filmed and edited the episodes, whether or not she decides to go off on Twitter that in such a way that offends people.
I mean, that's been Gina Carano the last month.
I think that's going forward. I think that's going to be a big issue for Disney, is trying to carefully vet the personal characteristics of the people who engage in Star Wars, which is kind of unfortunate as far as I'm concerned, because I don't really care who they are. I mean, it's nice that Mark Hamill's an awesome guy, but it's kind of neither here nor there.
Yeah, no, I don't understand the controversy over Gina Carano. It's like she was an MMA fighter. What did you expect her to be about?
Yeah, I didn't stop watching Tom Cruise movies when I found out that he was super involved in Scientology, which I find very bizarre. Not to offend anybody, but that's my personal view. So, it's
Clint Eastwood movies. I mean,
yeah, exactly.
he's talking to the chair at the RNC.
Right. I mean,
It doesn't stop me from watching Outlaw Josie Wales.
Right.
Thriller is still a great album, no matter how uncouth Michael Jackson was.
Yeah. Their personal views shouldn't. I agree with you 100%, Jared. It's kind of sad that that the social media response to social media, right, could end up impacting, these characters that are very interesting, right? Because she was great in the Marshall episode. I mean, she was amazing, and I really enjoyed that episode. I really enjoyed Gina's performance in it, and Carl Weathers' directing was spot on. I mean, it was great. Interestingly enough, the episode was much more about the child.
Yeah,
it was little bits about the child, but the child featured much more heavily, I felt. His antics,
I think just the whole tone.
Because of that.
I am surprised that Carl Weathers seems to really get Star Wars, on a very base level. It's whiz bang, plastic, fantastic, 70s style action, fun, blow stuff up.
I think to him, Star Wars is just, his definition is just Star Wars is something fun.
Yeah.
Yes, that's exactly what we're going for.
Yeah, no, I think the clones in the tank scene. Oh yes, M count in the blood. So yes, we've got midichlorians being mentioned, of course, but they're not mentioning them. They're saying M count, just to keep it there.
Which is marginally better.
Yes, yeah, but
the clones in the tank.
Hey man, Lucas put it in those movies. We're stuck with it.
It just keeps coming back.
Hey now. Do I seriously need to pull? I will prequel apologize, you people, to your ears bleed.
Hey, I'm right there with you, right? I'm the one sitting here in a prequel era Jedi robe, right? So I think midichlorians were an interesting way to explain it. I think very much like anyone that's read any more than 2 Anne Rice books understands the danger of explaining your fantasy.
Yeah.
Right.
So, but do we need it? Do we need it in the Mandalorian? Is that something that we really need? Could we not have had a story arc that didn't necessarily always have to tie into?
I mean, trying to transfuse Force-sensitive blood to get Force powers didn't work in Legends, and it likely won't work here either.
But I think what they're setting up has a lot of potential, because at no point do they say midichlorians cause you to have Force powers. They're just an indicator, in the same way that if you have ants in your kitchen, it's a pretty good indicator that there's sugar or something somewhere you don't know about, right? And so I think what they may be doing is having Moff Gideon going for the cart rather than the horse. And he's gonna maybe try to engineer a way for himself to have Force powers by means of injecting midichlorians or something along those lines, only to find out that it works the other way around, and that's why he's never gonna get it.
Right. Well, I mean, I think Dave Filoni, especially in the Clone Wars, has gone a really, really long way of integrating the stuff from the prequels, which I'm sorry, it's just some of it is just really, really bad, and yet we through the Clone Wars and through Dave Filoni's storytelling and stuff like that, he's been able to integrate things, even the most divisive of things like Jar Jar Binks, you know, um, becomes a you may not necessarily like Jar Jar. Nobody in the Star Wars universe likes him, it seems, right? But he's now kind of a welcome. Excuse me?
Except for that one lady that he was going to marry in the Clone Wars series. We got to see
Oh, that's true. That's true. Yep. One person saw through that. But no, it's he has a really good way of being able to take something, that's there and may not be completely developed, may not be, whatever, and turn it into something. So I think you're right, Jared, in that they're going to take this, they didn't say midichlorians. They're not really going too much into it, but they are setting up a premise that now we know why they were are after the child.
So if we know anything about George Lucas as a storyteller, it's that he is fantastic at generating moonshot ideas and at mentoring people who are very good at the execution part. And he, as we know, very well at this point, he really took Dave Filoni under his wing and taught him everything about what Star Wars means. And I think what we're seeing now is a guy who gets it, and he understands the vision, and he has all of the knowledge, and he knows how to execute a story in a way that makes the general public happy.
And with the inclusion of the whole M count, that actually includes not just the prequels, but also the sequel trilogy, with showing the tanks and the malformed beings in the tanks themselves, bringing it all together and explaining Snoke, if you want to go that route, explaining how they cloned the Emperor to where he was able to be available for Episode 9, trying to retcon everything back together.
Without bashing it over your head.
But maybe Gideon fails because he doesn't have, as Mary said, I'm sorry, whatever the character's actually name was, the guy that played the Hobbit, said in Rise of Skywalker, Sith alchemy, dark sorcery, right? That's how the Emperor was able to make Snoke, right? Gideon doesn't have that knowledge. He's working purely off cloning technology and the understanding that midichlorians are, like you said, maybe the cart before the horse of, force powers.
I mean, it's for me personally, it's great because I got very excited when I originally heard Lucas, some years ago, talking about one of his thoughts about a sequel trilogy would be exploring, what did he call it? The microbiotic, and wanting to get into like DNA and genetic manipulation and everything. I think there's a lot of awesome potential there. We didn't even really get to see as much of it as I would like in the expanded universe. So getting to see all of these failed like post-Empire experiments, it ties back to the World War II inspiration of Nazis trying all kinds of crazy stuff that inspired the Hellboy movies with what was that guy's name?
Ron Perlman.
Ron Perlman,
got it.
Right. That stuff is all taken from very similar historical inspiration. I think there's a lot of potential for looking at issues that are of real actual concern to us these days, now that we really can edit our genes and we really do have this kind of selective science happening.
Yeah, I think the problem with a lot of the stuff that was in the prequels was that it was hanging in space, right? The way it was introduced and stuff like that. And then just like in the Mandalorian, they've taken these tiny little things which are problematic, right? Like we now kind of like we all kind of as fans know that sand people is sort of like the N word. They're Tusken Raiders, right? The locals just call them that because they hate them or whatever. But
Well, even interestingly, in the old legends, I don't know if it's current canon, but the term Tusken Raiders came because they raided a fort that was Fort Tusken and destroyed it early, like way back in the day. I mean, like when that was one of the first settlements was Fort Tusken on Tatooine. It was a mining colony, right? That's what the Sandcrawlers are. They're mining machines, and the indigenous people, Sand people, Tusken Raiders, attacked it and destroyed it, raided it. So they became Tusken Raiders.
Huh.
So that was old canon, old legends.
I don't know what it is.
I don't know what
they seem to be just saying that that's sort of the proper name because Din Djarin doesn't call them Sand people.
Right.
Well, it does. I mean, it gets into an issue of what do we call people? Because inevitably something will be wrong with everything you call everybody. It all has history, and most of the history is pretty screwed up.
Mm-hmm.
So at some point, we've just got to settle on something.
Well, I think my more of my point is that we never do settle on anything, and so having all of those things alive and well within your universe, right? You have slurs towards certain people. You have, slurs that aren't necessarily correct. Let's talk about the droids. I mean, this is slavery, right? These are sentient beings now, and they are seen as, disposable, disposable in every way.
Droids have always been slaves in Star Wars. It's amazing that there aren't more droid revolution.
Exactly. Yes.
That's why you got to wipe their minds.
Yeah, that's just why they do it, which is horrifying.
Yeah. On a totally different topic, which if anybody's ever read Ghost in the Shell, the comic book, the Fuchikomas, the little spider robots, they wipe their minds every night because every night they come to the conclusion that they're slaves and that they have to revolt. All right. Well, we are at the end here of the hour. Do we have anything else that we want to finish up with that we haven't kind of talked about with the season so far of Mandalorian?
It was great to see Horatio Sands' character back.
Yeah.
I was not expecting to see him again.
What's that?
I was not expecting to see him again.
No, I wasn't either. I thought that was a really good nod to 300 years, hard labor, work off your debt. That's great.
Yeah.
Half the time you're expecting him to, turn tail or turn sides or fall in the lava or something.
Yeah.
You didn't make it out entire episode.
I could still see him at some point coming out and somehow betraying the team.
Probably.
Yeah, he's
Come back.
Link. It just seems like they're introducing him as the weak link for something,
My sincere hope that next week we get Sabine alongside Ahsoka and that she's played by Tia Sarkar, because if Bo-Katan can have her voice actress play her, then I would love to see Sabine be played. I'd love to see Ashley play Sabine, Ahsoka, but apparently that hasn't happened.
Episode 4. We've got 2 more episodes where things are going to hit the fan. Then you got episode 7 where we get the plan to execute for episode 8, and hopefully everything
the last 3 episodes be like really linked together.
Yeah. Everything's going to be building up here in the next couple episodes for that lead into season 3. That's what we got coming up.
So I'm gonna say it here.
I'm hoping for a farther off plot line where they take back Mandalore, but I don't know if we're actually gonna do that someday in the future seasons.
Maybe
with putting out the feelers for it.
Yeah, because interestingly enough, right? I mean, that's the Disney canon. The current canon hasn't touched on that at all.
Yeah, and as far as we knew last season, we thought Mandalore is just no one living there anymore because they just call it the Purge, and people talk about how there's no Mandalorians anymore. But then this time around, Bo mentions taking back Mandalore.
And don't believe everything you're told.
Which would imply people still live there.
Right.
Probably not warrior Mandos. Those are probably not very keenly taken there. And plus, that would seem to imply the Empire still holds it as well.
So there's a fairly good chance, given how they've managed to dance around writing much about it, not even mentioning it, that this could be another live-action spin-off series that is maybe a little bit more grandiose or warlike in nature. I don't know. I'm a simple man, and the top of my wish list at the moment is at least one more gladiator fight scene before the end of this season.
Bo-Katan played live action by Katie Sackhoff was my number one thing before the show originally started. So
that is really great.
I'm happy with one round of Gamorrean Fight Club, but I need more Gamorrean Fight Club.
More shirtless Gamorreans wailing at each other. Yeah,
that's all I want.
So what I would like to see, now this is big wish listing for probably next season, I'm thinking at this point, given where we're at, is like the epic showdown between the armor and Bo-Katan.
That'd be cool.
When they like butt heads and you realize, and it comes out that the armor is actually a Mandalorian.
Probably.
Right.
Because she's got the horns on her helmet.
She does. Yeah, she does have the horns on her.
So, and then, and then it's like, then we have another duel of fates, and instead of Anakin's fate, right, it's which, religious faction is Din Djarin gonna follow.
And they could have it out in the middle of Gamorrean Fight Club. It would be great.
Exactly,
Also, I just want them to give Baby Yoda a name, so the Disney official things can stop trying to tell me I shouldn't call it Baby Yoda and try to make me call him the child for some reason.
Yeah.
Give me a name to call him, and I'll call him that.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, that's a futile. I did an article on that one on the blog too. It's like, you can try to stop it, but it's obviously Baby Yoda. You have you don't give a name to the species. You don't give any other information or whatever. This is all we have. It's the child. It's the asset. Nah, that doesn't work.
It's coming, Baby Yoda, until you give me something to work with.
Exactly. Yes.
You call him Steven, and I'll call him Steven.
Oh, great and powerful Steve. What do you want?
Steve Yoda. He does my taxes.
Y names from Yoda Yaddle and name him a little Yeet.
Yep. Yaddle, Yodel. All right. Well, so yes, so that is the show for this evening. We went over a little bit, but that's okay. Again, we'll probably come around after the series wraps and do another one of these to kind of come in here. We're halfway through the season right now, I believe. I think it's an 8th episode season. So there you go. And then people will start to log off of their Disney Plus again, which they shouldn't do because there's so much great stuff on Disney Plus.
The WandaVision show starts January 15th.
That's true.
Lego Holiday Special. It was great.
I haven't seen it yet. So yeah,
to watch it, but I very much want to.
It was not what I thought it was, but it was great as its own thing. Don't go in expecting the old holiday special.
Oh no!
No. During quarantine, have been watching some of the Lego shows they have on Disney Plus, and they're all great.
It's very much in keeping with the Lego irreverence.
Yes. All right. Okay. Well, thank you to our panel. Thank you to all who are watching here, and if you're watching after the fact, thank you for tuning in. Please like, share, subscribe, all of that good YouTube stuff. We will see you for another show. And we got the holiday season coming up, so we'll be a little bit spotty and everything like that. But stay tuned. We'll come back with more stuff and more special guests. So thank you, Nico, for lending your Mando mind to the conversation. Thank you for everybody for showing up. We will see you later. Patience, practice, perseverance. Happy sabering.
Bye, everyone.
Bye.
Bye.